the real game that we're playing here is how can we actually wake up so that every moment of our life is this new kind of experience of being with what is and being on that ride in a way that's really, really beautiful to us, instead of trying to win and get to some fiction in the future that's not a real thing that we never arrive at because we've let the muscle of now kind of atrophy in our brain.
Are you listening?
This is the Rob Scott Show.
Damn.
I mean, really, like, if we're not trying to change the world, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Rob Scott Show. How you doing, Sarah?
I'm great. It's good to be back. How are you?
It's good to be here. This is really fun. What are we going to do today?
Yeah, so today I want to talk about two different big topics that I think that you would historically say are two different episodes, but I want to combine them into one, and I want to look at them side by side. And that would be gratitude and expectation. And so often you have referenced like a gratitude muscle and how we can work out our gratitude muscle. And I have also been mulling over the idea of how we as humans just kind of grasp onto different expectations about life. And so I have a couple questions around them, but that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Yeah, for sure. I love that. I mean, gratitude is absolutely the place to start that conversation. I think, first off, it always takes me back to sort of three kinds of meditation practices, right? If we go into meditation for a second. So one of them that is very, very popular in our culture is known as mindfulness. And that is the ability to kind of place your mind on something and grow the ability to be able to leave it there. So the focus might be your breath. It might be a candle. It might be a song. It could be whatever, but it's can you fill your mind or be mindful, right, of one thing. And then as you notice yourself drifting off, you come back. So that's one kind. Another kind is known as insight meditation, which is Vipassana is a very popular brand of that. And that is closer to just being aware of wherever your attention goes. And in fact, they have scanning processes where you keep moving that attention up and down your body, let's say, or you might just find that, well, now I'm aware of my walking, or now I'm whatever. And so that can be much less of a practice that allows you to meditate through your entire life. You know, you could be meditating while you're driving, you could be meditating whatever, and it really is just the act of being aware of whatever is going on. The third one that I want to mention that I often talk about is generative practices, right? So this is where you're trying to manifest a certain kind of feeling or affect, right? So if you wanted to sit in loving kindness, you would be working the muscle or growing the muscle of being capable of being full of loving kindness. You would be thinking about, who do I love? What's going on? One that is incredibly powerful and really, really magical is gratitude, right? And so we've come up with this 3G3 practice, right? Which is 3 breaths, 3 gratitudes, and 3 breaths as just a little bucketed practice to grow the muscle of gratitude. And we can certainly go deeper on that practice, but there's other places where we've talked about that. But gratitude is, I mean, I don't know. And I guess if I'm loose with it, gratitude ends up being, I mean, it's really close to like our favorite way of feeling. And, you know, tons of people would disagree with that. They'd be like, I love being excited, or I love being in love, or whatever. But as you're feeling gratitude, there's a sense that it gets really close to all those, right? Like it's this doorway into feeling really, really valuable, feeling really, really lucky, like just being grateful that the sun is coming up, or just being grateful that, you know, your mom loved you once, or that, you know, whatever's going on, right? That, that you have a close friend, that you're having a good day, whatever it is that we can kind of connect to for a moment. If you can really feel the feeling of gratitude, right? It's one thing to think about being grateful and like, no, that's what people think. Well, write down 3 things you're grateful for. That's level 1, is just identifying them. But then can you actually connect with and let amplify that sensation of feeling grateful? And if you can, that quickly turns into love and excitement and all these other things. Right.
It's like a gateway into that. Does that make sense?
No, it totally does. And I love that. It's kind of like the seed for these other things that we as humans just like really kind of strive to live our lives around. Real quick, I want to back up just because I loved what you were saying about mindfulness. And it is obviously the word mindful, to be full in your mind. We in the business have the meditation challenge, and often a lot of people that go through it or work with us ask us the question of like, well, Rob, how do I empty my mind? right? So it's almost like people, and I think this, so I think that,
or how do I stop thinking? I think
how do I stop thinking? Right,
yeah.
right.
Right.
So I think what you just said can be really helpful to anyone listening, because it's just a different way to think about it. And I think maybe a common, maybe misconception for people who aren't, or maybe are new or haven't done a lot of mindfulness or mindfulness practices or meditation, look at it in a different way. So I liked how you were explaining that we're not only finding a place in our mind, but we're trying to keep our mind in that spot versus
and there's
emptying it or not thinking or.
Well, there's levels. Let's go back to that. Don't let me forget to kind of explain that more, because I think that's a real shortcut. I think that people can actually have a meditation practice for years if they're left to just, find your breath and stay there and stop thinking, right? Which is really bad instruction on meditation. I mean, it's pretty close to the instruction that many of us get, but it's really bad instruction. Hopefully it's gentler than that, and it's more like when you think and you become aware of it, like bring your attention back to your breath. Our challenge, if anybody hasn't heard of it, is called the Back to Breath 7-Day Mindfulness Challenge. And it has mindfulness in it. It has gratitude in it. It has, without really naming it, it's got some insight practices in it. So it kind of covers all those different ways to meditate in this really brief introduction to each. And when you get to the end, you kind of know that you're in a very different place. But what I wanted to say about it's, if we're trying to stop thinking, the other side of that is sensation. Right. So there's like commentary. Well, and we'll get into expectations being almost like the opposite side of
Yes.
well, right. But if we go back to like thought and sensation, if you're trying to meditate or you're trying to sit in gratitude and feel that feeling, but you notice you keep thinking, that was my invitation to you. It's like you can think about what you're grateful for, but can you connect with the sensation of being grateful, right? The sensation might be like warmth in your chest, or however you would describe that kind of tingly goodness that is the actual
butterflies,
right?
tingles,
Butterflies,
heart skip,
sensation, right? And that difference between thought and sensation is really important, and I don't hear enough people calling that out. And so, stopping thought is really just moving your attention from the thought space into being aware of sensation or sound or taste or sight or any of those things, and being truly in the experience of this moment. So this is the doorway into now, right? We've got this guy. We've got, brilliant.
He's pointing to a tattattoo that says "now" on his wrist. And for all of our listeners.
And we've got brilliant people like Eckhart Tolle, who wrote The Power of Now. And there's people that are trying to give us this kind of doorway back into, thought is often really time-based. We're either worrying about the future, or we're regretting the past, or we're somewhere out there, or we're lost in imagination. And home base that many of us have let atrophy is the ability to just be here. And so what's happening here is not some void. It's not some absence or quiet or whatever. It's incredibly loud with sensations, right? Beautiful experiences of like what your feet feel like on the ground, or what a laugh feels like, or what a sunset makes us actually experience in our body when we're really with it, rather than the normal move that somebody does, which is, I love this sunset. I'm vacationing in California. I better schedule to come back to California at least twice a year so that I can keep having this experience again. And exactly what they did was they're missing having the experience now. Like they've seen one glimpse of how great it is, and they've ruined it by trying to plan or capture or hold it, because they have the expectation of, can I bottle this? Can I hold this? And what you don't realize is, as soon as the sun goes down, now it gets colder and it's raining. You may not judge that as such a good experience, but that's got beauty in it too. And so the real game that we're playing here is, how can we actually wake up so that every moment of our life is this new kind of experience of being with what is, and being on that ride in a way that's really, really beautiful to us, instead of trying to win and get to some fiction in the future that's not a real thing that we never arrive at, because we've let the muscle of now kind of atrophy in our brain.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's such an interesting way to think about it, because, as a mindset coach and working with mindset, we do talk a lot about thoughts and thought creation and running your mind. And there's this kind of beautiful thing that I think, and I think you would agree that's available to a lot of people, which is that next step of kind of embodying it. Because it makes it so much better. Like that it sounds easy, and I don't know if it is easy or it's easier for some people and not for others, but to really be able to kind of experience the sensation of what your thoughts are doing to you makes you, in my opinion, kind of a more whole person with a richer life.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, well, if you're not at all aware of that you're thinking, or you're aware that you're thinking and you don't know how to stop it, right? You don't know how to kind of get away from, let's say, negative thoughts. There's beautiful thinking too. There's nothing wrong with that. You just don't have as much power if you can't do anything about that. Like, you're much more trapped, right? That's much more like a jail sentence, in your life, than having the freedom to put that down, find your calm, find your presence, find your power, right? And really act from this moment and not carry all this kind of story and BS from the past, not be overly worried about winning or figuring it out or how to do the future perfectly or whatever that is, right? And you all of a sudden you can be like really embodied. I mean, it's truly like a form of enlightenment. It's like waking up into, oh, this is the quality. This is the actual poem of my life that I was missing for my whole life so far, right? It's like waking up into that beautiful Eden that is, the real like divinity or the quality of being alive, right? Really being here, instead of just being kind of separate away from the whole thing, away from the connection to everyone else and to presence and to, quote unquote reality, to be in our own fiction or our own story of how good we are, how good people think we are, what I'm supposed to do, what I'm supposed to be. That story is lonely, right? And if you can put that down and come back into the moment, you end up joining all of the energy with your own consciousness, with your own attention. You end up joining all of the isness that's the only real thing that's actually going on.
Yeah, and I like thinking about gratitude as this kind of root or seed or beginning point for things like love romantically, or love, friendship, family, happiness, joy, fulfillment, because they are very related, and we do often try to, I think, or depending, I should just speak for myself. I often try to kind of theoretically, yeah. But around things like that are more abstract, like things that we want that are very abstract to us, that are really like truly known to us when we feel it. Right? So often people are like, well, I think I'm in love. They're like, I feel like I'm in love, or no, I think I'm happy. It's like, no, I feel joy. And so gratitude is kind of a powerful thing, in my opinion. And people miss it. They try to skip past it often, or they don't give it enough.
Well, it's also really fast. It's like, it's almost like medicine. It's like mental medicine, right? So let's say you're stuck in traffic and you're just hating your situation in the moment. You're late, or maybe you're not even late, but you just hate it because you'd rather be home watching TV or whatever's going on, and this guy's about to bump into you and all that. Can you just, number one, could you just pause and tell yourself instead, I'm not late. I'm right where I'm supposed to be. This is okay. Like, I don't have to be at any pace here. That's one level. But the next level is instead like, what am I grateful for right now? Like, what's okay? And that, it sounds so cheesy. Like, it really does. I get it. I get how simple and ridiculous. Like, if I want to be a real thinker in the world, like really doing advanced stuff, that is not the front foot that I should put forward. Like, just ask what you're grateful for, because it sounds so, pop culture, simple, over easy. But the actual application of that, the ability to stop yourself in the moment when you're overwhelmed or you're scared or you're frustrated or you're fearful or whatever, and instead go, what do I love? Who loves me? What went well recently? What's been going on? Hey, I'm not hungry, or hey, I've got a house with shelter. Immediately now, you're not comparing yourself with what's above and feeling less than. You're gaining what you do have and putting yourself above what you don't have, right? So it's this difference between comparing up versus comparing down, where gratitude is this shortcut where if you truly ask yourself that and then answer it, and take a moment to be with something that you're happy about, which literally could just be nobody's punching me in the face right now, or I just at least had lunch, or you know what, I'm safe and okay, even though this isn't what I want it to be. Like today
I'm wealthy enough to afford a car to be sitting in traffic
totally,
driving.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. I'm not living in the dark ages. I'm not suffering with my leg eaten off, because an alligator just attacked me. I mean, it can get ridiculous, but any of those can allow you to kind of settle back into like, okay, this is fine. And so then from that, the seed of our own attention then is now sourcing a different reality for us, a different subjective reality, right? We're not changing objective reality, right? Nothing out there necessarily changes, although we do bring a different version of ourselves now to objective reality. So over time, we may change it. If we can do this and become a happier person over time, it's going to change the world also. But immediately, you can change your internal or subjective reality, like immediately. And that's incredibly powerful, right? So gratitude is crucial. It's simple. It's like the fastest way to do a ton of this stuff. Should we explain the 3G3 practice?
Oh, we can. I just real quick, there's a nuance that I want to call out for what you just said for our listeners, which is this idea of comparing up or comparing down, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be I don't have. It could be like I have this and that person doesn't. But that's not what we're talking about when we're finding gratitude. It's more, I just kind of want to go back to what you were saying in the now, right? So this is not changing the way that you're comparing yourself up or down or better or worse. This is literally finding things that are right now and moving your attention. Rob always says attention is a place. So it's moving your attention to the present moment. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah. And I wasn't saying that it's not comparing up or down. It is a way of comparing down instead. Right. So, this is interesting. There's a survival expert, and I've heard this secondhand, so I'm not going to be able to quote who it's from. But there is a survival expert who said literally the most important skill in surviving outside, like if you went on a survival skill training thing or whatever, the beginning of the training began with, he goes, you've got to have the ability to compare down instead of comparing up. And so all that means is that if your default is to be comparing yourself to those that have more, are more, like if I'm comparing myself to Oprah in how much money she has versus how much money I have, or how much influence she has versus how much money, or how famous she is versus how famous I am, or whatever, I'm not going to feel amazing about any of that, right? If I'm making a real comparison about that. Okay. If I'm comparing myself to Tony Robbins or people who are just more successful, have been doing it longer, or having more impact, whatever, I am not going to be doing well. If I compare down, and this isn't now to go, okay, I'm better than other people. Often one of the best ways to compare down is to compare down to your past, to show yourself how you're getting better, right? So,
I like that. I like that a lot.
That's a wonderfully loving way to do it, where you can just say, hey, I'm growing. How am I better than I used to be, or whatever? But in the survival sense, what he meant was, you can, if you're out there and you're dreading because it's like you're so cold and you don't have food and there's all these things, your survival skill is, well, what do I do? What do I have? Right. So you're now comparing against how bad it could be. Like, okay, my foot is not caught in a bear trap. Like I can at least walk. I may not have shelter now, but I have the ability to go look for shelter. Right. So that ability to compare down instead of comparing up to what you don't have or who you're not or what options you don't have is an incredible base ability. And I did probably a pretty bad job of it, but what I was trying to say is that if you can take a negative mindset in any moment and move it over to like, what am I grateful for? It's very similar to that same skill of just going like, well, it could be worse, right? Like
right. Okay. I get that. Yeah.
I'm at least safe in my car. It could be way worse. I could be in a ton of pain right now, or somebody could be violently assaulting me, or, I could have lost even more money or whatever. Right. So that ability to compare to how worse it could be is a way to start connecting with gratitude as well.
Well, and is that what maybe makes gratitude different than meditation? Or like, is that the kind of...
So meditation, and I don't want to oversimplify it because there's a lot of different interpretations of what that is. If we're calling meditation just a mental practice, let's say, one of those forms is called generative practices. And so if you're sitting in a way trying to generate gratitude, that would be different than mindfulness, right? Because mindfulness is just trying to be present with an object, something, a flame, your breath, something that is the anchor. A generative meditative practice would be like, you know what, I'm going to go spend 10 minutes and I'm going to just try to think of and generate as much feeling of gratitude as I could. That generative practice could also be loving kindness. It could be equanimity. It could be whatever. And all we're doing in a practice like that is we're sitting down and trying to create or generate a certain emotional state. Right?
Got it. And then Thank you for clarifying.
There's a ton of different ways to do that. Let's think about this. I use this in my coaching often. The next 10 minutes are going to go by, right? Like, just imagine 10 minutes of your life, and we'll say we're talking the next 10 minutes. So from now until the next 10 minutes, if we were sitting here just doing nothing, right? Like having nothing, letting our attention just kind of be wherever it is, that's going to be, let's call that a baseline. It's not necessarily going to be amazing, not necessarily going to be horrible. Let's say that all we were going to do was be generative, but in a really negative way. We were going to think about all the ways that we don't feel like we're enough, all the ways that we're behind in life, all the people that have hurt us. We're going to think about all the embarrassing things that have ever happened to us. We're going to worry about the future. We're going to just be in a loop, like literally trying to generate, right, a generative practice,
right?
But not a positive one. We're going to go negative for 10 minutes.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know how good you are at that, but I could get pretty dark in 10 minutes. I think most people could get pretty dark, and especially if we take it really seriously and we really kind of get into that and generate that, right? Well, that's a period of your life. And many people who are completely untrained are on some loop where they're doing that all the time. They literally live not just 10 minutes, but a day, not just a day, but a week, not just a week, but a month. I mean, they're living years of their life. And it moves from just a way of thinking or a certain way of being into kind of a personality aspect, right? They actually become like, well, I'm just negative. It actually becomes a part of their identity, right? They actually do that. So in contrast, no matter where you are, whether you really talk to yourself negatively or whether you're kind of average or maybe you're amazing, if you were to add on top of that some type of generative practice of gratitude, let's say, and actually just do the 3G3 practice or whatever and sit in for 10 minutes, well, not only does that just definitely increase the quality of your next 10 minutes.
Right.
But chances are, if you do that a little bit, it'll become easier for your brain to find gratitude, and it'll become more pattern for your subconscious to just kind of connect with that, so that muscle, the muscle of gratitude, becomes stronger and literally through your daily life. So, compare those two lives, right? Somebody who's average, somebody who's really, really negative, or somebody who's actually gotten good at generating or being generative toward these positive emotions, right? So what if you had like a loving kindness practice? What if you had a gratitude practice? What if you did that? And it sounds like, well, that sounds like work. I don't want to do it. But the payoff is, not only is it going to really feel good while you're doing it, but it actually bends you toward that. So unconsciously throughout the day, you're elevated and you're lifted, and your life can become much more just toward being naturally grateful for what's going on.
Right. It's something that you grow with. And so maybe in the front end, it seems like a lot of work, but eventually that's going to feel, if you can work that, strengthen that muscle, that's going to feel the same as whatever negative loop, right? It switches over to a positive, and that's kind of awesome.
Well, the negative loop just seems silly, right? It starts to be like, why am I entertaining that, right? When we actually get away from thinking that's reality and realizing that we're the one interpreting it and that we have the power to kind of change that story for ourselves, that ability is transformative for people. And if you don't have that ability, I'm going to suggest that you want to gain that ability as quickly as possible, and if you do have that ability, use it, right? Just.
Well, and I think it's infectious. So if you've ever been around people that are negative or kind of stuck in negative or stuck in anxiety or overwhelm, you feel that. You start to feel that. You're like, oh, that person is whatever. They're probably going to be stressed. But it's opposite too, right? If you're around someone that's like, oh my gosh, I'm really present. I'm grateful. I'm full of love, whatever. Then you feel that too. So for our listeners that are also looking to impact kind of a wider circle beyond themselves, like that's a really important thing to learn how to do, because it does have a ripple effect, I think. Sure. And I definitely would be happy if you wanted to share 3G3 with our listeners. That would be great.
For sure. So it's just a really simple practice to kind of sit down, and you don't have to time it. You can time it. Let's say you wanted to sit for 5 minutes and just work on gratitude. That's amazing. Let's say you wanted to do it while you're driving a car and, driving to work and doing it. It can be very casual. But let's say you wanted to wake up and really have a more serious, gratitude practice. Find a quiet place to sit. And the first 3 is for 3 breaths, where all you're doing is doing your best job to bring your full attention to kind of slowing down and taking 1 full deep breath in and out is 1. Another deep breath in and out is 2. And literally for those 3 breaths, you're doing your best to be mindful of your breath. What is the sensation? We're just trying to leave thought and get into sensation a little bit. Okay. And then we're going to consciously use thought for 3 gratitudes. Okay. So literally whatever comes to mind, and you're just kind of searching, and the question might be like, what am I grateful for today? One that always comes to mind for me is, I'm grateful for my mom, right? So I would imagine my mom, and the advanced version of this is not just to notice it in thought, that's powerful all by itself.
Right.
Spend a moment or 2 feeling what being grateful for my mom is, right? So what is that? And this is up to you, depending on how much time you have, how long you want to sit with it, whatever. So one of the G's, right? It's 3G3. One of the 3 G's in the middle is a gratitude, and it's I'm going to think of my mom, and then I'm going to literally just go back and forth between thinking about her and kind of noticing what does it feel like to be really grateful for mom. And I might be creative with it. I might remember when I was a little kid, or a recent lunch I've had with her, or whatever, right? So I'm just kind of getting creative.
Sure.
Whatever's manifesting, how do I feel grateful? Now, for people that are really shut off and don't have a lot of connection to their emotions, this might not feel amazing, right? But as you gain the ability to go, I can feel it a little bit more, this is something that grows. It truly is a muscle that we can get better at. So for whoever, you don't have to be just like me, whoever this is listening can just do your best with this. And when it's time to move on, you just do your second thing. And it literally could be, I'm really happy the sun came up today. And I mean, that might sound silly and stupid, but let's just imagine it hey, if the sun didn't come up, we'd all be really cold and dead. Nothing works without the sun.
Plants wouldn't grow.
Wow, no plants, no food, no, heat, no life. There'd be nothing here, right? So the fact that the sun came up and that we're still alive and that we're still here, I can kind of bow to that, right? I can kind of just go wow, I'm really grateful. And so there's, people who pray, there's a difference in praying when you're asking for something, and this might get us back to expectation, which is that we started with. There's a difference for hey universe, or hey God, or whoever somebody might be praying to, and asking for stuff. I really hope this works out, or help my team win, or hopefully nobody notices I didn't pay my taxes, or whatever we're praying for. And I'm silly with what those might be. But there's a different way that is instead one of gratitude. And, this isn't implying that you have to believe in any deity or anything like that, but there's a sense of just walking around just kind of going wow, it's so amazing that we're here. Even if you're having a bad day, it's kind of amazing that we're here. I've always been really fascinated that, I'm kind of, I guess, pink, and I have 10, 8 fingers and 2 thumbs. And it's still weird to me, right? It's always something of wonder to me that this even exists, right? That consciousness is here, and that we have this physical experience of what's going on. And so each moment can be really, really special and divine. And as we connect with that, there's a sense of thank you, right? To whatever, whoever, that's very different than asking for stuff. It's more hey, thanks for what I already have, right? And so that is a sense of gratitude.
And we have more than we think that we have in all this, at all times.
Totally. I mean, there's so much going on that's, and you can also be really angry. When it's going bad, you can be hey, why am I here? I didn't ask to be here. This is horrible. All those experiences happen too. That's not going to be what you're focusing on while you're doing a gratitude practice, right? That's for a different time, hopefully not as often. So then you do that for the second one, and then it's, you remember a puppy you had and you're just really happy. Or, I have some friends that are no longer here, and I could be really angry that they're gone, that they've passed away or whatever, or I could be really grateful for the time I did have with them. So I might think of my buddy Mike and go, I'm really happy that I had all those. I'm really happy that I had that experience. So, I'm feeling a lot of gratitude for Mike, that Mike was in my life back when he was, right? And so then I'm actually feeling that. And then the last 3 in what we're doing here is 3 more breaths, but now you're trying to feel those breaths down into all that kind of energy of gratitude that you've built up. so that you can kind of take it off the seat and with you into your day. And, then obviously just as often as you can, be thinking about what you're grateful for. I mean, there's no reason not to be like, wow, I'm really happy that happened, or wow, that's really good. It's just an incredibly positive way to point your attention and use this thing between your ears known as your brain, right?
Yeah, oh, definitely. And the other thing that I was thinking about is that I think often people in the personal development space in general, but people that you work with and clients and people that go through our programs, they're looking for connection, right? Humans naturally look for connection. And so to me, based off of what you've said about gratitude and being in the sensation and feeling this kind of connection to your own sensation, it seems like that's the way to find connection with other people. Because if you can't find connection with your own body, your own feelings, your own thoughts, then it's going to be really hard for you to find that kind of connection without,
I love that. Yeah.
in another place, right? You want to learn kind of what that feeling is with yourself, and then you can kind of bring that out too. So maybe that's another quick kind of tip or a hack for another vote for gratitude in case anyone's dragging
It's an interesting thing to talk about, because I think you can connect with somebody mentally, you can love exchanging ideas, but there's, the emotional body, right? It really is the space of relationships. Most of the stuff where we really feel joy, most of the stuff where we really feel fear, most of the stuff where we really feel anger, it's often in that relational space with other people, right? And to your point, a really high expression of that is connection and love and, feeling important, et cetera. And if we're cut off from our emotional space, not just gratitude, but just the ability to be in the sensation of our feelings, right? Our emotional feelings, then it's going to be really hard to have a ton of empathy or really be there for another or really connect or appreciate when someone's there for us, right? That whole relational part of our brain is a little bit atrophied if we're not connected to that and we're just mental. We're just in this game of thinking all the time. So when you can embody and when you can start to connect with beauty and gratitude and all these things, now there's this open space to start connecting and really meeting other people in this beautiful space. And I think that's a really powerful tip. That's really great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want me to throw a question your way about expectation, or should we save it?
I think we have to now.
Okay.
Okay. I love it. Yeah, I'm totally excited.
Yeah. So as far as kind of things that we've been talking about on our podcast that I've been thinking about, patterns in the brain. So survival mechanisms or different ways that we had talked about attachment, or how just in general our brain builds these patterns that can usually help us but can sometimes hold us back. And so I wanted, I think what you do wonderfully that I don't do is that you look at something without kind of calling it out as good or bad or whatever. So I was interested to have you kind of talk about expectation, because to me, it feels bad, right? It takes us out of the now. It takes us out of kind of a gratitude and is putting pressure or building rules. But I'm sure that there's a different way to look at that, or another angle of it where it's also can be helpful, but trying to figure out or help our listeners manage when is an expectation helpful and when is that kind of a limit for you?
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge one. So this, to your point, this could be a whole nother talk. I hate that we say that a lot. I'll do my best to stop saying that and just be present here. But this really does deserve more space. And I love that setup because it is, everything has the potential to have good and bad kind of arising in it. And that's all defined by us and how we judge it, right? What's going on. So let's talk about some positive things about expectation. And let's even marry it with desire, right? So
okay, great.
Desire and then expectation of certain outcome. And expectation might even imply that I'm now attached to how I really want it to be, right? Well, the more that we do that, the more doggedly we will work to create that expectation in many cases. So, a lot of the human ingenious creations and the fact that we're not living in the trees or the caves or, we have now houses and infrastructure and all, internet, all these different things are because there were people that saw a future, got really connected to it, and then worked through very difficult things to make it so, right? And so in your own life, the other side of being present and grateful with what you have and all that are goals and accomplishments. And, in the land of duality, bad does exist. And so we are trying to get away from bad and move toward good in certain ways. In non-duality, we realize that both of those are arising and that we can be really present. We don't have to be on a treadmill of working toward good, et cetera. So expectations have incredible power. And if you can not be completely trapped by them, if you can use them to the degree that they're helpful to you to keep you motivated, keep you focused, get committed to something and stick with it, they're incredibly powerful, right? Desire in general is the engine to keep us going forward. It's really funny. It's very biological too for us. Like almost all our desires have to do with, food, sex, connection, like all these things. And so as AI is waking up and, many people are like really worried about this general AI that's going to be super smart and all that kind of intelligence, unless it's mocking us or modeling us in some way, it's not going to have the biological drivers that we have. And so what does intelligence look like without all the biological drivers? Like if I didn't have to eat, I might make very different choices with my time and attention and everything, right? If money wasn't a concern to me in the way that it has to be in our society, I might do very different things with the intelligence that I have. And so it's going to be really interesting when AI pops up in what it does or doesn't desire. It may not have desires or expectations in the same way, because it doesn't have kind of the incomplete system that we are that needs inputs like food and, connection and all the things that we actually need to keep surviving.
That's kind of mind blowing, because if you think about, what's the biggest change in our society and culture over the last, say, 20, 25 years is this kind of, people talk about disconnecting, millennials being disconnected, people with their head in their phone, not quite AI, right? But, we have Siri, we have Alexa, we have, all those kind of mechanisms. And there is, because to your point, they're not being driven by this, need for security and love. And they're literally just artificial intelligence kind of things, or kind of this, does kind of kill a little bit of the human aspect of it. But it's so saturated in our culture and how we behave now. So it's like, who's teaching who what?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of addiction that is, those tools are causing us to feel addicted and captured and are playing on certain, they're being built to kick off certain peptides in the brain and, make dopamine happen so that we keep coming back to them. So there is a little bit of more than a little bit of manipulation happening there. And that's maybe a little divorced from just what Alexa is all by itself.
Right.
I don't know that Alexa is addicted to anything. So that's kind of there's two things going on there. But, expectation can be good, but it's also really easy, to your point, if we're going to put gratitude and expectation next to each other. Gratitude's like warm and beautiful, and it's very actually hard to find the bad in that. I mean, I guess if you're so grateful, the bad might be that you become so contented that you don't get off the couch and do anything, right? But if you have a life that's full of gratitude, I don't know that would necessarily be bad. But, I think a lot of people end up thinking about meditation in our culture and they take it to this wild extreme. Like, well, if I got really good at that, I would just sit on a log and never move. And that doesn't work in our society. So I'm just not going to meditate because that doesn't work. And that, I want to say it really slowly and clearly, that is absurd. That is not what happened. That's not what happened to the Buddha. That's not what happened to Jesus. Like, nobody did that, right? So it's when you actually wake up and get this, you're very motivated to go work, but that motivation is no longer anchored in fear and need. It's more in creativity and expression and connection and other stuff, right? All that said, expectation has a lot of good in it. So does desire, so does attachment to a certain degree, but they very quickly can become things that very much erode our happiness and our connection. They may help with survival. You were talking about survival mechanisms.
Yes, right.
Expectation of a certain way of being, or expecting that I can make a certain amount of money in this business. All those things may help me succeed.
Expecting that the sun comes up, right?
Yes.
If you didn't expect that the sun comes up, you probably would live your 24-hour day in a completely different way.
Yeah. We might be using the word slightly different. And so I'm not at all disagreeing with you, but I don't know that I ever expect it to come up consciously, right? Like, if you were to ask me, I would say, yes, I expect it to, right? There's some default kind of expectation of that happening. I think you're saying if I expected it not to, right? Like
Right.
not to, I don't expect it not to, but I'm not sure I'm consciously expecting it either because
Got it.
I've let that be down in my unconscious. Like that's one of the things that I'm just kind of letting be on autopilot because that's not the complex part of my day, right? That it does take calories and like we were talking about in the last episode, that caloric spend of what thinking is, right? So, it's interesting because what does expectation mean, really?
I guess this is a longer talk.
Yeah. And so what I'm talking about is like when we get to where we're expecting, like when we're let down because an expectation didn't happen, I'm expecting that my partner is going to get me tickets to a concert for my birthday or something. And then that doesn't happen. And I'm completely let down because I got attached. I had this expectation and then life didn't meet my expectation, right? This is the story of what suffering is. All of a sudden, what I was expecting for this moment isn't real. I watch it happen in, I have this stepson who I adore. And, if he was expecting to finish a movie, but the movie is no longer in the rental window, and for 2 seconds we don't own it because we have to buy it again, and he's lost his mind because there was an expectation that we were going to get to watch this movie together. And rather than like calmly dealing with that and seeing if we can fix it or not, it's just horrible for 10 minutes, right? And it's kind of ruined. Kids aren't the only ones doing that. Adults are doing that all the time. We have an expectation of how long it's going to take at the DMV. We have an expectation of how much money I'm supposed to be making in my business, how appreciated I'm supposed to be.
The two that I think of that are like, I think most translatable to any and all people is the driving example is good. We have a certain expectation when we get in our car and we get on the road, and often you'll see the most centered, regular people lose their mind because they expect that people are going to drive a certain way, behave a certain way, and vice versa. So there's a whole bunch of expectations happening. And the other one, kind of a different example with the same power is the expectation that we're going to live long enough to retire, which is, I guess, more is the sun going to come up kind of idea. And the truth is you could get hit by a bus at any time. But these are like two very kind of, one's an immediate expectation and one's kind of a more like longer.
Tell me about the dying before retirement one. What do you mean that's an expectation? I don't know that is that something you think everybody kind of expects, that they're going to get to retire one day,
maybe not retirement or planning for being older, or, I mean, often people, there's a longevity. We hope, I hope we all, live as long as we need to live and do all the things we need to do on earth. But, I mean, retirement planning,
I work with a lot of dark people who would be happy to be out of here much sooner than retirement, So I don't know that we're all expecting that necessarily. I think what I'm holding on to and what I'm talking about is when expectations are a letdown to us, right? Where we've made the mental error of being attached to an expectation, small or large, and we get really destroyed or, subtly destroyed because that expectation doesn't come true. So let's talk about driving for a second, right?
Okay.
Without being conscious of it, somewhere we think, that thing's about 15 minutes away. Should traffic be normal, right? And all of a sudden I get in and there's an accident and I'm stuck in it. And not only am I like crawling, but I'm not moving. I'm literally like stuck. And for some reason, being in that space stuck, like I could be in my office and not moving at all, and that's completely fine. But if I'm in my car and not moving, that's like people lose their mind, right? You get road rage, you get people yelling, people shoot each other. I mean, it's insane, right? Now, why is that? Because now we've had this expectation of like the speed limit's 35. Why am I going 0? That's not right? And so that's the human mind that is now attached to an expectation, and it causes a ton of suffering, right? Now, while expectation could mean 1,000 other things, I say we just kind of hone in on that and go, the management of our mind, having an expectation, and to marry that to gratitude is when you catch yourself suffering, and it might be subtle, like you might here's what's subtle. When I say it's kind of out of our awareness, it's because of course traffic's supposed to be moving, right? It doesn't seem in the moment that there's anything to investigate there. It's just, why aren't we moving? This is wrong, right? What a great use of our emotional states are when you are super bothered, rather than immediately following what's obvious about your bother, check in and see what you're attached to, right? See what the expectation.
I love that.
And what's being like, that is the shortcut to change. right? So somebody broke your heart. What are you attached to? And it doesn't mean that what you're attached to is unreasonable. It's reasonable to hope that traffic goes right. It's reasonable to hope that your partner doesn't break your heart and do something wrong. But as soon as you can see what you're attached to, you then have a little bit more agency to go, oh, do I want to remain attached to that and suffering, or do I want to let that go to some degree and make a new expectation with myself, right? Do I want to change, or even go further and go, do I want to instead focus in this moment on what I'm grateful for? Right? So can I sit in that dead traffic and immediately change my subjective reality from totally frustrated, hating life, thinking that the whole universe is against me, obviously the world wants to make me late for this interview I'm going to, or whatever, to, you know what, I'm right on time. I'm just where I'm supposed to be. And I'm really happy that I've got the friends I have. And I'm really happy that I'm safe. I'm really happy that I'm, that I just did that project I did a minute ago, or whatever. Right? Yeah. And all of a sudden that feeling can turn from, and what you'll find is quite often, and this isn't, I don't want to get magical about this, but often when you can just chill for a moment, things tend to work out around you, and all of a sudden traffic begins moving again and you're actually okay, right? But if you stay road ragey, you end up in a fight or an accident, or, it
you bring it to the next thing that you're headed to. Totally. Yeah. I mean, I love that we got there, because that's exactly what where I think I was trying to get to when I was thinking about this podcast episode. And I kind of just we should say it again clearly, so that, because that is, I think, the main takeaway that we should give our listeners here, is that when you, and you're going to say it better than me.
I want to watch you try.
Okay. It's that when you find that your expectation is let down, then you should check in about what part of what are you attached to in that, and then make the choice of how you're going to address it with the tools that you have. Like that's a major life skill that will ease a lot of pain and suffering.
And it may not be the thing that's going to be obvious is the negative emotion, right? The expectation is not obvious. So the move here, the thing to grow in is, okay, I'm having these feelings. I'm really angry, or I'm really sad, right? Normally we're not that bothered by being really happy, so you can let those go. But like, I'm really anxious, or I'm super scared, I'm super sad, I'm super angry, like something's going on there. What am I expecting to be different than what is, right? What am I attached to here, okay? And how have I left the reality of what is? Now, often our reality is really bad. If you're being mugged and somebody's punching you in the face, like that's super bad. Get out of there, get help. You got to handle that. That's not the time to like work on your emotional state. But if you're sitting safely in a car and you're just stewing and you're just angry, yes, the universe may be doing some things to you. Things are happening to you for sure, but you have much more agency to change how you're reacting to it. At that point, there may not be anything to do to change it externally. So what can you do to change you internally? And so the move is to go, clearly I'm pissed. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I'm allowed to be pissed. Sure. But like, what am I attached to here? What am I really pissed at? What is my expectation? Oh, my expectation is that I was going to be on time. Was that reasonable? When you're angry, you're probably going to be like, yeah, that's reasonable. I'm supposed to be on time. But if we actually bring a little bit more mature thing to that, it's not always, you're not sometimes going to be on time. Sometimes there's going to be road work, or there's going to be an accident.
Right, or a car accident, or,
something that's accident, somebody might have just died.
Out of your control. Right.
Yeah, somebody might have just died, and there might be a much more serious thing going on than whatever I'm trying to go buy concert tickets. What's happening here? Right. Whatever. So the move there is to see what you're attached to. And one move is just to come back and be with what is, which is known as bring it back to your breath, back to breath challenge. Okay. Backtobreath.com. Go get it. The other one is, to look at what you're attached to and see if you can move maybe to gratitude, which wouldn't be mindfulness and breath, but it would be like a generative practice of like moving your attention to what am I grateful for? Or if all you can muster is just becoming aware of whatever you're attached to, then now you've at least objectified it and seen it, rather than have it be unconscious bothering you. You can at least be wise and know, oh yeah,
right. You grow your emotional intelligence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Awesome.
Boom. I think there it is. That's it.
That was awesome.
You like it?
I do. Yeah.
Right.
I think that will be really helpful. And
cool.
It definitely was helpful to me, I'll say.
Good. All right. Well, let's wrap it up there. If you guys want, I have a training called The Fundamental Shift. You can go to fundamentalshift.com. Go get that training. It is really, really good. We have a limited offer after that for one of our programs at a high discount. I think you will enjoy it. Go check it out. And we have the Back to Breath challenge, which is totally free. It's just a 7-day mindfulness challenge. It's like 7 or 8 minute audios for a week long where you get to listen to me grooving on these different ways to become mindful and actually wake up a little bit. So hopefully you will check that out. Sarah, I appreciate your time. This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Talk soon. Bye-bye.